Hi, my name is Marta, and you're listening to my story. I'm originally from Poland. I have been living here in Korea for, depending how you count it, 13 years or 17 years. And I am the catalyst behind Seoul Startups, the biggest international startup community here in Korea. So my story with Korea starts in 1993 when I came here for the first time with my family. My father became a diplomat for the Polish embassy here in Seoul, and my mom ended up working at one of the universities teaching Korean students Polish language. So we lived here for 4 years. I actually ended up being sent to an international school. So this English, not from any English-speaking native country, I learned all of that here in Korea. I know it might be surprising, but it is what it is. We lived here for 4 years. I thought every little girl lives abroad, lives in Korea. So when I came back to Poland, I had a pretty nasty shock when I realized that children my age don't really travel that much, don't have such experiences. Always left sort of a barrier between myself and my peers. So I always wanted to go back, not necessarily to Korea, but to being a traveler, being an expat. And the opportunity didn't come up until my university days. As you know, especially universities in Europe, lots of exchange programs. And that was my main reason to go into college to begin with. I was not really interested in getting a degree. I was just interested in getting an opportunity to travel and live abroad. To be even more precise, I wasn't interested in going anywhere in Europe. I always assumed Europe was going to be there. We're part of the European Union, right? It's not going anywhere. It's a small place. You can go there over the weekend to most of the countries. I was looking at places like Latin America, Africa, Southeast Asia. And when my mom heard about that, she was like, oh, no, you're not going to those places. They're dangerous. You're going to die on the streets. And you're such a horrible daughter. You're putting your mother through so much pain. Fortunately, my university had exchange programs with several Korean universities. So I pointed that out to my mom and said, well, how about Korea? You've lived in Korea. People don't randomly die on the streets in Korea, for the most part. So my mom was like, okay, you can go there for an exchange program. And I did 6 months of exchange student life, which I don't have to tell anybody, is very little studying, a lot of partying. So I came back. I really forced myself to find a way to go back to Korea. I really wanted to go back. And I came across the Korean government scholarship program. I pretty much twisted the arm of the person responsible for the program at the Korean embassy in Poland. He was not interested in running the program whatsoever, but I told him look, I need to go back to Korea. You're gonna process my application and we're gonna make me go to Korea. And long story short, I did. A few months from coming back from the exchange program, I came back as a scholarship student. So while doing my MBA program, I applied for a position in one of the biggest companies here in Korea, purely because I knew I had to find a job. I wasn't specifically looking to work there. I went through the whole process of writing an exam with several thousand people, of going through a very complicated interview cycle, and I got accepted. I was one of, maybe 10 foreigners and about 1,000 people who got accepted into that company that year. And I ended up working there for almost 4 years. I don't know if expat life is a challenge or not, to be honest, because it has been such a fixture in my life. I've spent more than half of my life being an expat, right? So I don't know if it's challenging. I guess at the end of the day, I always try to be open-minded and surround myself with people from the place that I'm living at. Try to be respectful and mindful, but also at the same time, I've learned that in order to survive, I will never become Korean. That's one of the big lessons that I learned. I will never be a Korean. No matter how fluent I speak, no matter how much I understand the culture and the rules of the game here in the society, I will always be a foreigner. And when I was younger, that used to frustrate me a lot, and I would try to be more Korean than the most Korean, and that did not work out at all. It never would have worked out, obviously. Yeah, as an expat, you have to be respectful, be mindful of the place that you live in, but you also have to remember that you will always be a foreigner. You'll never become Korean, you'll never become, I don't know, Filipino or Thai. You'll always be whatever your name is from that and that country, and you have to embrace it, and just, while staying open-minded and mindful, also be proud and confident about what you represent as well. It's very hard to pierce that armor that people have here, both in personal relationships and also professional relationships. And I think that's what people find very frustrating at first. But I think you just have to be patient and also just learn the rules of the game here, the social game, kind of know the pecking order, like know how things work around here. And then once people realize that you know those things and that you know how they operate, they will slowly start letting you into their world. I left my job in the biggest corporation in Korea. So I decided to work as a bartender in a bar in Gangnam. And a lot of our patrons were startup people, CEOs of startups, who would be very interested to see, first of all, a foreigner working in a bar, but also they would commission me to do a lot of freelance work, both to do with marketing, translation, and things like that. And that kind of set my footprint in the startup world. I later was headhunted by one of the accelerators to run a program called K-Startup Grand Challenge, which is the biggest international startup program here in Korea for foreign startups that want to expand and set up their business in Korea. So that gave me the opportunity to kind of see the world of accelerators, but also the world of the government side of things when it comes to the startup world. And that's very important because what I discovered was that the Korean startup ecosystem is very much driven by the government. The money, the policies, the politics, everything comes from the government. It's not entrepreneur-centric ecosystem, it's a government-centric ecosystem. What is Seoul Startups doing? Well, currently we're focusing on building the connections within the community, giving people access to connect with the right people, with the right resources. And you have to keep in mind that this community is not just for foreigners. In fact, no, it's quite the opposite. It's a community for everyone. So we also want to help Korean startups, Korean entrepreneurs connect with the global network of like-minded startuppers, of investors, of accelerators, give everyone a chance to have the access that they deserve to grow their own businesses and grow their own ideas. But we also try to organize regularly events that focus either on highlighting our community members or with experts in various industries so that people can get more in-depth knowledge, more in-depth insights that will interest them. We have been also doing discovery trips. Our most recent one was in Europe to Jeju, where we spent 3 weeks on learning about the local startup ecosystem, meeting the key players there, and we put up the discoveries in an online report. We also try to regularly create content about the Korean startup scene, but also about global organizations like working remotely, because we think that that's the future. And we also want to encourage Korean startups that, yes, maybe right now it's a little bit hard to hire people from abroad, but you can still hire them and have them work remotely for your organizations. And here's how you can do that. For me to do what I'm doing and kind of survive as an expat and as, I guess, a founder of a community, a catalyst of a community, was to find a mission. When I feel that I'm doing something, not just for myself, but for other people, I feel fulfilled and I feel I can really, break those barriers, walk over those mountains, because I know I'm not there for me, I'm there for that little man that doesn't have a voice and that needs a little bit of a push up in the startup ecosystem. If you feel that you have something that you believe in and you really want to fulfill and see fulfilled, then it will make any challenges that come your way much more bearable. I hope you enjoyed my story. Stay tuned for more.